One of the most common questions or concerns I have from my clients about entering into a business transaction and signing a contract is, what about an exit strategy? What if things don't go well and I want to get out of this deal? And my answer is yes, you can create an exit strategy, but you really should create that strategy before you sign the contract, and there are certain ways to do that. Unfortunately, many people come to me after they've signed the contract, and at the time that they're trying to get out, and it's already too late, and they think that, oh, is there a loophole? How do I get out of it? And I talk about loopholes in the other video, in my channel. Basically, there are no. This concept of loopholes is a myth. So how do you negotiate your contract so that you create an exit strategy? There are certain types of clauses and terms that you need to negotiate, and they are representations, warranties, covenants, and contingencies. So let's take the example of a buyer buying a business. The buyer is going to ask the seller for warranties. Now, in general, we know in generally what warranties are. It's a promise about the condition of a product. We use that term pretty regularly when we buy things, and it's the same idea. So the seller will, the buyer will want to ask the seller for certain warranties about maybe the status of their business, whether there are pending lawsuits or anything that could relate to the status of the business or the condition of the business assets. And so the buyer, of course, wants more warranties and the seller will want less warranties. Ultimately, you want to be realistic about what the other side will agree, but if you carefully negotiate this, then you can create, that's how you create the exit strategy if the seller violates the warranties. Same with contingencies is another one. So let's just say, as the buyer, you don't want to enter into this business deal. You don't want to buy the business unless something happens first, say, for example, financing. You create that as a financing contingency, so you don't have to buy the business if you're not able to obtain financing. And there are a host of ways to create this contingency exit strategy. There's also representation. So what is the buyer expecting from the seller in this buying the business? Is the seller making certain statements about the condition of the business? Now, this is a little bit different than warranties, but it's the same idea about, okay, like I told you that the last time I fixed a certain thing in this business was last year, and that's representation that they're making. And then if it turns out that that thing breaks down and then they had lied or misled about that thing being fixed, then that would be a violation of the representation, and a buyer can use that as an exit strategy to undo the deal or whatever it is that they're trying to seek. And lastly, there's the covenant. So the covenants are the promises between the two parties. Both sides are going to have covenants, but the seller can also promise to do things. Again, like we were using the example of a buyer buying a business, the seller may have to do certain things in order for this deal to move through, and that's part of their covenants. And if the seller does not fulfill those covenants, then the buyer can turn around and say, okay, since you didn't do your end of the deal, we don't have to do our end of the deal. So again, these are carefully negotiated. You don't want to overly negotiate to the point where I want all the warranties and all the representations. You have to be realistic, and it's very strategic about what your risks are, what you want, and it's just a matter of weighing like the risks and the benefits in your specific deal. And so that is how you create an exit strategy. If you are looking to enter into a business deal and you're worried about exit strategy, contact my office, 630-517-5529.